Welcome to Queers and Quills, the official podcast. I'm audiobook narrator Kirt Graves. Every episode, I invite an attending author or narrator to join me for a one-on-one conversation about their lives and their art, so attendees and readers from across the world can get to know them not only as professionals, but as people. Joining me today is Mia Hutchinson-Shaw. Mia performs across audiobook, stage, and screen. She's narrated over 100 audiobooks and voiced stories featured as New York Times, USA Today, and indie booksellers bestsellers. Trained at Interlochen Arts Academy and the Royal Conservatory of Scotland, she brings a zealous and rigorous love of language and accents to her work. She's called the seashore of Massachusetts, the Rockies of Montana, and the sand dunes of Michigan, and the friendly streets of Glasgow, Scotland, all home. She now resides in NYC. She's always on the lookout for a good walk, big vista, and an excellent thrift store. Yes, welcome, Mia.
Thank you. You did very well with my name. I'm impressed.
Well, I've had the benefit of actually meeting you and hearing you say it.
It's true. It's true. Some people turn it into a sneeze, which is always hilarious.
Hutchinson-Shaw?
Yeah, exactly. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's strange because that doesn't seem like a difficult name to me, but I've also had like telemarketers really try to complicate my name. And it's like, is Mr. Graves there? It's like, why would that be your first instinct? Like, it's so simple. It's so simple.
And yet so hard.
And yeah, people want to overcomplicate things.
They do.
Speaking of complicated processes, how on earth did you become an audiobook narrator? Your bio tells us about all your training, and that certainly did not seem like an easy path. So why this?
Yeah, I think why make it easy, right?
Right.
Like we were saying with the name, like why make it easy? I was one of those 17-year-olds who was like, I want to be an actor. I'm obsessed with stories. I grew up, my parents are both storytellers in their own way. My dad's a Spanish professor who specialized in magic realism, in Spanish literature. My mom's a ceramic artist. And so I grew up in a house that like loved making art for fun and also loved making art all day, every day, and making paychecks from that art as well. So I was lucky that I had really good role models, that it was like possible to be an artist. And I know that that's a part of my story that's different than some of my colleagues. And it's always really interesting to kind of compare and contrast like the struggles and like challenges and joys of that. But so I knew that I wanted to be an actor, and I went to Interlochen for my last 2 years of high school, met the best friends of my life, got a really cool, like, kid-friendly lens into, like, rigorous training, which I love. Mm-hmm. I'm a Virgo, so I love, like, details and, like, structure and, like, depthful exploration of information. And then I went on to Scotland and did an acting degree there for 3 years. And again, like fell in love with like the most thoughtful teachers and like cohort in my class. And then I moved to New York and like continued to be a professional actor and kind of got to 2020 and was in my like late 20s. And as the world shut down, like so many of us, like really started having like those big conversations with myself of like, is this the kind of life that I want? Is this the kind of quality of life that I want? And I think that at the time in 2020, my career had some like unique hitches that weren't quite sitting with like my goals as a human and like my strengths as a human. And so I was kind of going through a lot of thoughts of like, do I want to quit acting and do I want to do something else? Like, is there a way that I can like use my skills to be like more of service, but also give myself a higher quality of life? Like all of these like big questions also
the big
like
questions.
While the world,
yeah,
like while the world is like totally melting and like everyone around you is also asking big questions. And I'd always been an extremely avid reader. I'm an only child. So I like lived in that world of imagination and books. Like that's how I never earned an allowance. Every summer, my parents would take my age and add, what was it? Was it 2 zeros? So if I was 9 and I read 900 pages in the summer, I would earn $20.
Wow.
So that's how I got like spending money as a kid. And so, and this was also during like peak Harry Potter time. So it wasn't like, it wasn't too hard. I'd be like, oh, I read, Goblet of Fire twice, like $20, please. So yeah. And so it was during like the shutdown, just like listening to more audiobooks. I have a really wonderful friend, Jess Nahikian, who I went to Interlaken with and Royal Scottish with, who in 2020 was already a prolific narrator with a home studio. And I was seeing them really lean into this world, and I got very curious, and they were very generous and gave me some mentoring during this time. And I just like took all the information and ran with it. And I was like, this is like the blending of like all of my like super skills, right? Like the love for language, like being a hardcore reader my entire life, like love of accents, working alone, making my own, my own schedule, like getting to work in collaboration, but in a different way than making theater. So I started probably in 2020 teaching myself the skills and didn't really start narrating in earnest until like 2022.
Wow.
But,
yeah. I mean, obviously we are still dealing with so much of the fallout from COVID, and many of those things are not good.
Yes.
But it is good to remember that for many people, it was a time in our life to hit pause, necessarily, without choice, and think about what we wanted from a life,
Absolutely. And I think there's such a power in that. And I keep trying to remind myself, even as we as it seems to get farther and farther in the rearview mirror, it's like reminding myself of like the power of rest and pause.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and to also remind yourself of all of those things that you just said about narrating that are great. The self-determination and the scheduling and the collaboration, but at a distance, and also, I mean, I would add, just as you talked about finding community at Interlaken and in Scotland, I noticed you did not say that in New York City. We have this amazing narrator community that is also a big bonus for doing this work. So there can certainly be hard days, but there's a lot to love about the work.
Absolutely. I think that the community is probably what allowed me to stay. I think, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm not saying that like as clearly as I could, but I think it was like I loved the work, and I could have been an actor who like worked in audiobooks a couple of times a year. But I think that once I got to know the community and I really connected with certain members in my community who had really similar experiences as I did, and introduced me to like coaches and other community members that allowed me to connect with them. That was like the moment of like, oh, this can be so much more expansive than like what I thought it could be.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be a career, strangely enough.
Yeah. Strangely enough.
So I am curious, before we started recording, you were telling me about some authors you work with in sapphic romance, and I know that queer romance and other queer stories are important to you, but can you tell our audience why?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in a household that was super progressive and open-minded and loving, but I had no queer representation. And so for me, I think I grew up with like a very static definition of what it meant to be queer. And I think as a young person, I didn't see myself in that static definition wherever that had come from. And for me as an adult to now be able to like embody really nuanced versions of queerness it's the best. And so I do it for my younger self, and I do it for those who will come after me, and also then to like celebrate the people. And this is corny and I know it, but for me, it's like to also celebrate all of the people who worked so hard for us to be able to embody like so many nuanced versions of queerness. And so for me to like be able to like step into roles that like embody all shades of like bisexuality and pansexuality, it's like so delicious, and something that I just had no representation for.
I don't think that's corny. I think it's necessary. We have to have appreciation for I mean, and to speak to that part of when we were younger, when the definitions were very strict. I mean, I will admit that when I was in high school and I had a friend come out as bisexual, I was like, sure, buddy.
Yeah.
Sure, but
totally.
It's just a stop on the way to Gay Town. We'll just wait, and it's like, okay, attitudes and like information had to come into my life that taught me over time that it doesn't need to be so black and white. Even though it was for me, which I think is what contributed to that, is I firmly believe there are some people who are 1s and 6s on the Kinsey scale,
Totally.
And sometimes, and I think around the time I was coming out, if you weren't, whatever the gay side is, 6, if you weren't fully a 6, you just kind of like hid, if you had a choice to hide, you could, and you did, because that's what society told you to do. And so it really was just like I have no choice but to be a homo. And then it's like, and then everybody else has to be that too. And now, not only do we have spectrums of gender sexuality, we have spectrums of gender itself, we have spectrums of asexuality, we have spectrums on like the polygamy side. Like some people just have so much more expansive ideas of what love and sex and sexuality can mean. And it's a really cool time to be a queer person. It's
incredible. I'm like constantly amazed and so joyful because I really clearly like remember being on the other side and hearing my peers going, well, he's bi, but we'll see. And going, well, I know, like, I remember being, 10 years old and being like, I'm pansexual. Hilarious. But like, also like, where did I even learn that word?
Yeah.
It was like, it's amazing. And it's like, we know who we are. And if we're given, and some people are set free by words, right? And if we're given the words or the experiences to set us free, then like, you just get to like be.
Yeah.
You just get to be. You don't have to like perform anything, which is like, I think the greatest gift.
Yeah. And I do just want to add the caveat that while it is a great time to be queer, there are also many reasons to say it's an awful time to be queer, especially for our trans brothers and sisters. It is also very tough times, but the language and the attitudes, at least in our little progressive bubble,
absolutely
have meant a lot of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like our queer joy is absolutely tied to our ability to keep fighting for all of the people in our community as times hopefully get better while they get tougher. It's like the work.
That's all we can hope for.
Yeah. The slow bent of progress.
Yeah. So you were an avid reader as a kid. What were the stories that influenced you most as you were growing up?
Yeah. Of course, I'm a Harry Potter kid. So my dad and I read Harry Potter in English and in Spanish together. So that was a big one for me. It was like the first book that I read in Spanish with my dad. So that was a huge one. And it's like, it's fun when you like have an experience with books that you have an experience with them, like in print in English, in print in Spanish, and then in audio in English. And I think it's cool. It's like a completely different way to experience something in like multiple languages and in multiple formats. And I just have like a lot of really happy memories of reading that with my dad. And I was a big American Girl doll book. And I also loved the Dear America series, like anything that was like tiny girl in history. tries to make progress in history or experience history. Like, I loved those books. And I think for me, it was a huge thing it was like a motor for my creative play, because I would like read these books and then I'd like go play in the yard and like embody these worlds, or like build myself like a fort in the backyard, similar to like Kirsten in Minnesota or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were big ones. And then also I was like very much influenced. My dad is a huge film buff. And so he would always, whenever I was like homesick, he would like bring home like crazy VHSs from the library for me. And I remember when he brought home like the 6 VHS BBC Pride and Prejudice for me. I think I must have been like home with the flu.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember being like, ugh, like, what is this? It's so long. Like, why would I like this? And then being like, this is amazing. So I have like a lot of, a lot of like Audrey Hepburn movies and like BBC, like classic literature adaptations. Like
have you found your way to that kind of work now as a narrator? Do you get to do historical fiction?
I have gotten to do some historical fiction. I just got to do a really fun Western called Tough Luck. And that was definitely a full circle moment where I was like, oh man, and it was about a 14-year-old girl like going from Missouri out to Colorado to find her dad. And I was like, this is very full circle. This is like full on American Girl badassness. So
yeah, it's so fun when we get to do work that we know we would have loved as a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really good feeling.
Cool. So if our audience is unfamiliar with your current work and you wanted to point them towards a book or two that like you're like, this is a really great representation of who I am and what I love to do, where would you point them?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 titles come to mind. The first is Unromanced by Erin Connor, and it's a queer rom-com, and it's co-narrated with Lee Asario, and it's a really fun romp. A burnt out romance novelist meets a jaded, very romantic TV star. And she tries to cure him.
I was waiting for you to say narrator and be like, oh yeah. Makes sense to me.
Yes. It was
somebody write that book.
Yeah. Ideas. Yeah. So that one's super fun. It's just like super acerbic wit, really fun supporting characters. And it's just like super fun to see some bi-representation of a male-female relationship as well.
Yeah.
And then the other one that comes to mind is a YA called Deadstream by Mar Romasco Moore, and it's coming out this spring, and it's a YA mystery that's set in the world of streamers.
Ooh.
Yeah, so very great YA representation, a lot of fun, thoughtful characters in there, and a little bit of a whodunit with a paranormal
love a mystery.
Twist.
That's great.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's such a unique setting, and there's a lot of really fun post-production that got done on the audio to make the IRL world versus the online world pop from each other. Yeah, I'm really excited to listen to the finished thing. Yeah.
Are you listening, Audis? There's production value. Well, those sound awesome. Are you ready to play our little question and answer game?
Yes, I'm excited.
Awesome. So the rules of our game are simple. So I have a deck of cards, and on each card is a question. These questions aim to learn more about you. Some are biographical, some are hypothetical, some are just plain silly. But I will not be picking which questions you will answer. Fate is. So I will deal 3 cards every round, and you choose one. Whatever card you pick, you agree to answer, with a couple of exceptions. So if a question comes along that you don't want to answer, you have 2 opportunities to switch things up. So you can turn the tables on me one time, forcing me to answer the question, or you can also discard a personal question in favor of answering a bookish question from the white deck.
Okay.
But then you have to answer whatever question gets dealt. And you know people have some opinions about bookish things, so
They do.
it may seem like an out, but you never know what might come out of the white deck. So
Okay.
all right, ready to play?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, round 1. Card 1, 2, or 3?
3.
3. What is your favorite body part about yourself?
My eyebrows.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I love that answer, and I love how quickly you were able to come up with an answer.
I love them. I almost lost one to a couple of stitches. So I feel like I have a very we've loved and almost lost.
Yes.
So we appreciate each other.
I love that. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3? 2. Brag to me about the best things going on in your life in the past 30 days.
I mean, it's beach read season. We're like in production for all the beach reads for this coming summer for narration. So I have an embarrassment of riches on my work deck at the moment, which I am very grateful for. And then also I've really been finding my joy in the kitchen, and I've really been loving cooking, and I made the most incredible, like, tomatoey white bean recipe from the New York Times, and I'm not going to remember what it was called, but it was like mac and cheese meets white beans with like a lemony arugula salad on top of it.
Yes.
If I hadn't had my relationship was already like locked down and loved up at that point, but when I served that for lunch, we were like locked down and like it was I was like, I have secured my future as a partner.
Yes.
These beans have done it.
These beans. Magic beans.
Yeah, magic beans. It was so good. I have to make it again, like ASAP.
Yes. And I would like the recipe, please and thank you.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Thank you. All right. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
It's like a tarot reading.
Oh, so this is sort of like you're getting opposites here. What is the trait you most deplore in yourself?
I take everything very personally. And I'm working on that. And I think I make it harder for myself because I take everything so personally. Yeah. And I think I could just use like a little like fairy salt bae to follow me around and just be like, grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt.
A sensitive actor, you say?
What?
Make it make sense. Yeah. You so feel real. Things deeply, you say. Interesting. How unusual.
Personalize them, make them in line with my story.
Yeah. All right. Card 1, 2, or 3?
2.
What? These are all so personal. What's one bad habit you're trying to get rid of?
Social media addiction.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Trying to engage with it thoughtfully. Use it as a tool for actual connection and not just like, I don't know, peeping toms.
Right.
Yeah. Really trying to like find connection with my relationships, and they can still be online relationships, but just not like trying to get over instead of like coping with my feelings through like journaling or taking a walk or just resting, like reaching for my phone. It's been really hard. It's a process.
Yeah. Keep me up to date on how that goes, because I mean, it's certainly something I'm an elder millennial, so like I'm always like, I don't think I'm as addicted to social media as some people. But then if I were to really examine my habits, it's like, I'm sure I could take a step back as well. And I found great success too in just taking the apps off my phone. So I can check them on my computer. I can check in with people. And I keep the messaging apps there. So if people are trying to reach out to me directly, I get those. But otherwise, it's like I can't just pick it up and go on Facebook or X or I will. TikTok's still there. Sorry. But
teach their own. There's no right way to do it. That's the other thing I've learned. It's cool to talk to people about it and share like that this is like something I'm working on, because everyone has different ways, like you just shared, of like, oh, I'm doing this and it's really helping, or I'm doing this and it's like, oh, interesting, that doesn't work for me, but that's a really cool thing that I could try. And I think that's why it's good to be honest about if you've got something that's like you're struggling with a little bit.
Yeah.
Community, man.
Community. All right. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
1.
Which talent would you most like to have?
First thing that came to mind is sewing. I would love to be amazing at a sewing machine. I think I would make some really cool, weird clothes. I just don't have the patience to teach it to myself right now, nor the space in New York City. It's very hard to have a craft table in New York City.
I was going to say, like, there are certainly, like, I think you have to have, like, good spatial recognition, or you have to have certain amounts of just like innate ability to see shapes to be a really good sewer, but a lot of it is just learning and equipment. You have like there's so much to buy. So, and I am a serial hobbyist, so like there are a couple buckets and a sewing machine worth of sewing stuff in my basement that,
oh my gosh,
every once in a while it becomes handy. Like I directed a show this fall where the actor took home his vest and washed it, and it completely removed all of the color. And it was like, oh, so it was like, what happens now? And it's like, well, I guess I'm going to the fabric store and buying some gold fabric and making a new vest in the next 2 hours. But it's like, thank God it was something simple like a vest, and I did it. So you never know. Like I admit I go through hobbies and I leave them behind, but those skills are still there when I need them. So
soft skills.
Yeah.
I love it. That's such a good story. I guess I'm making a vest tonight.
I guess. I mean, I was literally finishing it while Act 1 was starting, because it was like, it wasn't needed till the end of Act 1. So it was like, gotta get this done. Gotta get the zipper in. I fitted it on him before he went on stage, and it was like, and now we gotta hem it and go. So
let's go.
Yeah, the magic of live theater. You know. All right, I think we have time for 2 more rounds. So, card 1, card 2, or card 3?
Card 3.
Card 3. What book belongs on everyone's bookshelf?
This is fun, because I was going to be like, let's swap it for a book question.
I know, and then fate dealt you a book question.
Fate was with me on this. Okay, what book belongs on? Probably All About Love by Bell Hooks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a collection of her essays, and kind of the main through line of it is like, love is an action. It's not a feeling. It's something that you do. Yeah. Especially for these times, being in action in your love for people.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I picked that up. Maybe it's time to revisit.
It's a good one to just like pick up and read like 2 pages of.
Yeah.
Like if you're like one of those like crazy people who's like, you almost could treat it like a coffee table book in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good advice. All right, last one. Card 1, card 2, or card 3?
3.
What are you most excited about right now?
I'm going to flip it to you. Kirt, what are you most excited about right now?
Genuinely, this is not a plug. Yeah. I am most excited for Queers and Quills. Like, it is the thing that is coming up the soonest. I don't have anything like major between now and then that I am just so stoked about. Just genuinely, like, it is the event where I will get to see my friends. I will get to see readers who I haven't seen in a long time, because I haven't gone to a reader con in a while. So like, and I got to go to Portland for the first time last year, but for just a day. So I'm excited to have a little more time to spend in that city. So it is genuinely the thing I'm most excited about.
I haven't been to Portland as an adult, and I'm very excited as well for my day of exploration before. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be really fun. I'm really excited.
It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a blast. So, thank you so much for playing the game, being so brave. You got like personal question after personal question. Like they were
I love
digging
to take
deep.
things personally.
There you go. And you're not afraid to think deeply about things either. That was good. That was good.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for Queers and Quills, the official podcast. If you are already signed up to attend Queers and Quills, make sure to say hello to me and to Mia at the Oregon Convention Center in May. And if you're not, follow Queers and Quills on Instagram so you can see all the fun we're having this year and then get updates about ticket availability in the future. Until next time, I'm Kirt Graves, and I hope you're having a very gay day. Queers and Quills, the official podcast, is produced and hosted by Kirt Graves, in coordination with Mahogany Mail and Marley Valentine. All copyrighted material is shared with permission. Music and sound effects are licensed through Storyblocks Audio. All opinions shared are those of the individuals and do not reflect the positions or policies of any company or organization with which they happen to be associated.